thank you very much for joining us, everyone. It is Thursday, December 5th, and we are here for our Civil 3D 2020.2 and BIM 360 design presentation. This is a Imagine in Marketing webcast that we are holding for the introduction of the new features and functions of the latest update, which you see numbered there on the screen. My name is Matt Miyamoto, and I will be presenting for you this morning or afternoon, depending on where you are joining us from. Before I get started, there's a little bit of introduction in my background. I'm currently the project manager for our Infrastructure Solutions division in North America, and my background is actually in civil engineering. So I was a technical specialist prior to becoming the project manager, and taught a lot of classes and did a lot of consulting services and training for a company called Ideate, which was acquired by Imagineit a couple of years ago. And now I am part of our growing Imagineit team that covers all of North America and Canada and anywhere else we can get to. So if you do have any questions on services that we can provide, please feel free to reach out to your account managers for that. All right, so our agenda for today is basically divided into two sections. First being the Civil 3D 2020.2 and BIM 360 design enhancements. Cover some of the requirements and installations that are necessary for you to run these features and functions, as well as go over a little bit of information about how those will work. There are two different areas where you'll be working in if you choose to move to BIM 360 design with Civil 3D. One will be with the BIM 360 online portal. That's where you'll be able to access your BIM 360 hub. And that's actually where all of the files will be saved when working from the cloud. Also, we'll see a couple of changes happen within Civil 3D itself. So I'll show you some of the new updates that were made to Civil 3D, where you'll be able to access BIM 360 from, and how you'll be able to get to those folders and files that are saved on the online portal. And I'll also be mentioning along the way our Imagineit BIM 360 for Civil 3D Jumpstart service, which is an educational offering that we have providing a basic overview of how everything's going to work. We'll help you get your accounts set up on the administration side, talk about some project administration within the portal as well, document management, folder setup, file management, and of course, BIM 360 collaboration within the Civil 3D environment. So those are our agenda topics for today. We're expecting probably a little less than an hour for this. So thank you again for joining us on this morning. All right. So the first thing that I want to cover are some of the required installs and entitlements that are necessary in order for you to use and access the new BIM 360 for Civil 3D features and functions. First thing is the Civil 3D 2020.2 update. This is an update that was released a few weeks ago, maybe a month ago. And this is where all of the features and functions were added. So if you are a subscription customer for Autodesk products, you should be able to log into your manage.autodesk.com account. And under your product update section here, you'll be able to find Civil 3D 2020.2 update. My install is a 64-bit version, which is why you see that 64-bit item listed there. And we can see that it was released on November 2nd, so it was about a month ago now. This is the update that's required to add that BIM 360 design functionality. So unless you have that installed, you will not see the access to BIM 360 within Civil 3D. So that's the first thing that you need to have downloaded and installed. And this would be a requirement of all users who need to get access to that feature. The second thing that we need to install is something called the Desktop Connector. So the Autodesk Desktop Connector is a secondary program that you would need to install, and it sort of just runs in the background, but it's a monitor and the communication link between Civil 3D and your BIM 360 design account. So the Desktop Connector needs to be downloaded and installed on the same systems as the users are using Civil 3D on. And that will then give you that connection between the online cloud source and your Civil 3D application. So in order to access the Autodesk Desktop Connector, that's something you can download from the Autodesk website. All you need to go to is autodesk.com/BIM360/desktop connector. So you can Google it or you can search for it on any web browser there. And it should take you to this download page. Enter your email and your role, and then you'll be able to download that install file. This is free of charge, I believe, so you just have to download and install it, again, for each user that's going to be working in the BIM 360 environment. So those are the two installs that need to be done in order to activate the features and functions and get the connections going between the BIM 360 design portal and your Civil 3D desktop application. The last thing that needs to be done is the BIM 360 design entitlement. So along with the update for Civil 3D and the desktop connector, each user that's going to access the BIM 360 hub needs to have a BIM 360 design entitlement added to their accounts. This is very similar to a software entitlement where the account manager would log into the portal and assign a piece of software to a Autodesk user within that organization. In this case, instead of an actual downloaded and installed piece of software, it's a cloud entitlement. So if we were to look at my manage.autodesk.com account one more time, under all products and services, if I filter cloud services, my account now has a BIM 360 design entitlement. So this has been added to my user account, and that gives me that login option for BIM 360 within the online browser. So those three things are necessary in order for all of this to work. And if you don't have BIM 360 design, that's something that you can test out or you can purchase through your account manager. The desktop connector and the Civil 3D 2020.2 update should be available to you if you're already on software subscription for those products. So that update is part of the subscription benefit. The desktop connector is free, download through that website. And then the BIM 360 entitlement is something that needs to be added to the user accounts there as well. If you have any questions on how to do this, that is actually covered as part of our prerequisites for that Civil 3D Jumpstart service that we have. And you can also reach out to any of our tech support team or account management for some assistance with that if you have questions or any issues accessing your information. All right. So once you have everything installed, BIM 360 is then going to be incorporated into the Civil 3D environment. One of the things that we do need to mention up front is that this is a brand new sort of feature and function that's part of now Civil 3D, which is different from things that we've been able to do before. In the past, when we've been working in Civil 3D for project-based drawing files and references and data shortcuts, everything was either network drive located or local drive located. So you had to have a specific file path, and everything we call that, path specific or file specific, where you can't change the letter of the drive, you can't change the name of the file or the name of the folder. Everything had to be very, very precise. In the case of BIM 360, we now have an additional cloud-based location that can be used for things like XREFs, data shortcuts, and all of those other files that we had been sharing locally or through the network before. With the installation of the desktop connector, the BIM 360 drive will show up as a system drive in your options for file locations. So you can see there a screenshot of what would be my devices and drives that are located within my computer or accessible from my computer. I've got my C drive there. I've got a portable drive, which is removable. And then up in the left corner, you see that BIM 360. So that is the function that appears with installation of the desktop connector. I can now get the BIM 360 through the online portal by clicking on this shortcut that's been added to my devices and drives on the system. Once you have that installed within the Civil 3D environment, that's also going to change how the Start tab looks within Civil 3D. So I'm switching over to Civil 3D live application here. I've got this launched, and when I switch back over to my Start tab from the Drawing tab that appears my default drawing, not only does this look slightly different from before, we also have now a couple of new icons that are appearing under the File Type column, and also a new location that's been added to the list of items that we can get to from the Start tab. So you can see here I now have a combination of cloud-based files and local files. So local files would be things that are either on your machine or on a network-based drive. Those would be considered local. And then the cloud-based files would be all of the files that are saved to your BIM 360 hub. So you do have an option of going with cloud-based or local from the Start tab. If you wanted to access a file from your BIM 360 hub, perhaps not within the recents or not within the folder that you are currently working in, there is a BIM 360 link that would then connect you to your hub, and within that hub you would be able to access your files and folders very much as though it were a network location. However, it's now based within the cloud from that BIM 360 portal. So overall, the workflow in a general sense doesn't change a whole lot when you add the BIM 360 functionality in there. It is now primarily learning or getting used to the fact that you have a cloud-based location that you can access along with your local drives. So that is just another option that you have. And this carries over into the files themselves. When you click on XREF or you type in the XREF command and attach a DWG for an XREF or any other file for an XREF, you would be able to map to that BIM 360 drive location to get to those files. If you're using data shortcuts, your data shortcut working folders and file paths can all be set to those BIM 360 locations as well. So the desktop connector and the update there is really just enabling the fact that you can access your cloud-based locations as opposed to limiting to your local drives and network drives as we had in the past. So within that new enhanced view of Civil 3D on the Start tab there, we have local or cloud-based file types, and then we also have a new location to access through that BIM 360 link on the left. If you do have multiple projects within your BIM 360 hub, you can always navigate there as well. You do not have to keep it where it defaults to, which is usually the current project that you're working on. You can always navigate to other files and folders very similar to how you would do it through a network shortcut as well. So those are the big differences within your system that you're going to see up front. Number one, that BIM 360 system folder or system drive that appears there. And then number two, within Civil 3D, a couple of different file identification items with local or cloud, and then also that BIM 360 location. So now we talked a little bit about what happens within Civil 3D and how that view changes. I'm going to jump over to the actual BIM 360 online portal, which is the new features and functions that are going to be accessible once BIM 360 has been incorporated into the Civil 3D environment. One thing I do want to go back to and mention, I did have a note up here at the top on the previous slide. At the moment, it is not recommended that files, existing project files, be copied and pasted from local network folder drives into BIM 360. There's some inconsistencies with performance and behavior of some of the features that have been occurring when files are copied and pasted. It is recommended right now that if you start a project in BIM 360 or if you choose to use BIM 360 for a project, it should start there. So when you create those new files within Civil 3D, you're setting up a new drawing. As soon as that file is saved from the initial save, that should be pointed to and selected through a BIM 360 project. Don't save it to your C drive or save it to your network and then a couple of weeks down the line decide, oh, now I want to use BIM 360, so I'm going to copy and paste it there. The files will transfer, but the behavior and the functionality within BIM 360 has been inconsistent. So at this time, that is not recommended. If you are going to use BIM 360, do it from the start. So that's something that I did want to mention. And I have a small drawing file that I posted there that I can show a little bit of some of the behavior that we've seen. And inconsistent meaning, sometimes it worked and in one case it worked and in most cases it didn't. But it's minor within the features, not the actual performance. So BIM 360 online portal, we want to log into the portal through a web browser. So in this case, we are going to be using the online web browser, whether you want to use Microsoft or Firefox or whatever it is. You're going to log into that b2.autodesk.com. Your BIM 360 account is going to be accessible once you have that entitlement assigned to you. And from there, you will be able to see your BIM 360 hub or access your BIM 360 hub. If I were to do this on my system here, as I sign into my BIM 360 account, I have a landing page of option destinations within the docs location, which is where the files and folders are saved, account admin, project home pages where you can get to multiple projects, or a BIM 360 glue down there at the bottom as well. If I click on the docs link, that will take me to my document management hub or document management project location. And you can see here that I have access to a number of different projects within the organization as well. So if I'm working in one particular project on one day, maybe another project another day, I'll be able to sort and filter through that list and switch to the project that I need to access from there. Now this is essentially behaving like a cloud-based network location. So you can post multiple different file formats and file types. You can see here we primarily have a series of sample drawing files. I also have a Revit file in there. We've got some PDF plot files. So all different file types of files are supported in this case. But since we're dealing with the Civil 3D enhancements, we'll look primarily at our Civil 3D drawings and how they behave within that environment here. Within the online portal, some of the additional features include the options to create markups, the options to issue or to tag the different issues, assign them to different users and project participants, create RFIs, track status options. And there's also a versioning feature that is here. So if anybody has considered something like Vault in the past for versioning control, the BIM 360 tools now have a version control feature as well. So when we look at that, the BIM 360 online portal has a series of different tabs up there at the top. You can see that some of these have markups where they're highlighted and some of them are grayed out, so those do not have markups. Just initially from the way that that file view is presented, you can see a number of different options. These columns can also be customized to show or hide certain ones if you don't want to see them or if you want to see them as well. Once we get into the more specific features and functions, I'll talk about versioning first. So I had mentioned if anybody out there had considered using Vault in the past or had worked with Vault in the past and they were a fan of the versioning and version control. Versioning is one of the first tools that we have advantage to, or that we can take advantage of, when we're using that BIM 360 online portal. You can see here that I have a number of different files. Some of them have a V1, V2, V3. There's one down here that's all the way up to V5. So we do have a version 5 of something that's already there. And when we look at these different versions, what we can see is if I click in that cell or click in that column, I can see the dates for when those versions were posted. And if I wanted to set a current version, so maybe I'm looking at version 3 of this file is the most current, but something was changed between version 2 and version 3, and I actually prefer version 2 better. I can always switch to version 2 and make that current instead by selecting it and choosing to make it current, or I can even compare the versions to find out what's changed from one to the other. If I were to compare versions, that's an option that's live direct within this BIM 360 online portal, and it'll just open it up in a viewer for me to see right there. And when I compare the versions, it will give me two options. First option is an overlay, where I can see the file that's just been overlaid one on top of the other. They're color-coded so that one file is blue and one file is red. And I can see the differences between V3, which is identified in red, and V2, which is identified in blue. If you wanted to see more of a dynamic sort of side-by-side or slider bar overlay, that's another option that we have there, where we can see, as I slide through the project site, I can see the transition from version 2 to version 3, and then I can decide there whether I want one to be the current version or not. If I'm happy with version 3, I would close out and just keep that as my current version. If I prefer version 2, I could go back and make that or set that as the current version instead. If you also notice there, when I look at this, the timing on the saves are quite close together in some of these. So I have one that's 1:37 p.m., one that's on 1:38 p.m. That was the initial save of the file. So it was created and initially saved, and then I added some data to the surface definition and saved it again. So that's about a minute apart. At the moment, there's no option to delete just a single version. So once the versions are there, they're there. I cannot delete version 1 without deleting all of the other ones. So at this time, there's no option to just delete a single version. However, I can download a single version. So if I wanted to download that file or that particular copy of the file, I could always download that as a separate item myself and save that to my drive, local drive, or send that out if I needed to. So versioning and version control, that's one of the first features that are available to us now within the BIM 360 portal. One of the other things that you might have noticed and not quite mentioned directly, but there is a viewer. So that version compare that you saw was part of the online viewing tool. You can actually open and look at these drawings in their native format without having the software. It's just a viewing tool, so you're not allowed to edit or make any changes there, but you can mark up and you can comment on the design that you see. So if I wanted to view this topo data file, I could simply click on it through BIM 360 Online, and I'd be able to open that file up with the viewer and see what's in that drawing without having to download it, without having to have Civil 3D installed. So that's something that is a tremendous benefit of having this BIM 360 portal available to us. It also works with Revit files. So Revit files as well. If I've got a Revit drawing from an architect that I'm coordinating with as my consultant, I can click on that Revit file and open it up directly in the viewer there as well, without having to have Revit. And a lot of the properties are also available to us through the viewer as well. So within that viewer, I can select a window here, for example, and I can see that it has a name, it has a size, it has a lot of the information that I would see within the Revit properties, all built into a little properties window that's available there inside of this viewer as well. So not only do you have access to viewing the model objects, you also have access to some of the background properties. And then we have the available markup tools here, measurement tools. Over on the left, I have markups and issues and RFIs that can be directly added through the viewer as well. So version tracking, the versioning there is synced with each file save. So I mentioned again, there's a couple of these that are about a minute apart or so, and that's typically done because of the initial save of the file when it's been named. And then after I added a couple of things there or made a change and made a save. That may be an issue if you are someone that tends to click save every 5 minutes. In that case, you might get a whole bunch of different versions that are there with very short time intervals in between. So that's definitely something that you might need to consider if you're evaluating the BIM 360 tools for your future project workflows. Markups are the next thing that I wanted to talk about a little bit. So markups are also available through the BIM 360 online portal. When a file has markups, you'll see a little icon there in the markup column get highlighted. So some of these will be grayed out, some of them will be darker or highlighted. That's how you know which files have markups or not. The markups themselves are all created through Online Viewer. It's very similar to tools that you would see in something like Design Review, where you can add clouds and text and notes and measurements. Markups are listed for sorting and tracking. And they can also be set to different options for private markup, which is something that you would have access to, that you would be able to see almost like personal notes. And then published markups, which are then accessible and visible by anybody else that's part of your project team. One thing to note is that once a markup is published, it's not deletable. So once it's published and everybody's access to it, it's protected in that sense, so that someone can't just go in and be like, I'm going to delete the markup and pretend that it wasn't there or something like that. So markups can't be deleted once they are published for public view. But if it's private, then you can keep it something that you can edit if you need to in the future. And when we take a look at this list here in my folders, let's see, my current plan set, I believe I had something that's got markups on it. Yep. So in the corridors file here that I have within my current plan set, so again, these are just subfolders that were created within the project itself, very similar to subfolders that are on the network. You can see here that I have a corridors drawing that has both markups and an RFI that was attached to it. So if I go ahead and open that file within the online viewer, I would see that I have this markup here located in this upper right or upper left corner. I've got a identifying point there, so it's a point of interest. I've got it clouded and check surface elevation issues. So there's some spikes that I noticed here, and I'd want someone to go back and check for either bad shots or perhaps some surface modeling that didn't quite get triangulated correctly. So once that markup is created, I have it listed here. It's currently set to private, so when I look at it, I can still edit that. I can still delete that if I need to. So it's kind of like a personal note that's in here as a markup for now. But if I were to switch this to published, once it switches to published, then it is saved there for everyone else in the project to see, and I wouldn't have the option of deleting it anymore. So these types of markups can be added there, and then again, anyone else within that project that has access to your BIM 360 portal can then see the markups, and you're able to share those with someone else. If we look at the RFIs, again, I can switch to RFIs, issues, or markups at any time by using the left column here on the side. I've got a RFI in there that's calling out a surface spike. Once again, this is very similar to the markup. However, this is now kind of like an official RFI document that's been posted. It's been assigned to someone. There's a due date that's been attached to it, and there's a version of the document or which document that the RFI has been linked to. So not only is it a sort of more advanced version of a markup, it's actually a trackable and loggable issue that is now part of the RFIs for the project. And this is something that can be then saved and logged and sorted and filed for future reference if needed. So markups, they can be deleted if they're private. RFIs, once they're there, they're part of the project and they're saved within the project itself. If there are any issues that have been identified or added to the projects in the files, those would also be available there. In this case, I don't have any issues that have been logged, but I do have a markup and I do have an RFI. And again, this is viewable by all of the project team members once it's published as a item that everyone can see. If it's private, then it's just for you to view. So we've got those markups in there. At the moment, the markups do not transfer back over to Civil 3D. So if I were to open that corridor drawing inside of my Civil 3D application, the cloud and the note that was in there wouldn't show up within Civil 3D itself. It's something that's still within the BIM 360 online portal. So that is created in the online portal, and it's viewable there through the viewer in the online portal as well. We talked a little bit about issues. I didn't have any issues that were tracked or logged to the particular drawing, but issue is very similar to an RFI. It's just not quite as official in the sense that it's RFI that's assigned to someone and it's going to be part of the project log. Within an issue itself, it's kind of like a secondary level where you are actually giving it an assignment to someone to take care of. Assigning it a due date, but it's kind of like an internal level type of option, not quite as technically official as an RFI, where you're going to keep it tracked as part of the overall project. This could be kind of like just an issue within my design team. Maybe I have a member that's working on the topo model, so I'm going to track an issue as a project manager, and I'm going to assign it to that member to address. So internally, not something that I need to go back out to a consultant or to a project team member that's not part of my organization for. RFIs, that's something that we just saw earlier as well when I switched back and forth through the options there on the left. There's some question and answer fields as well, so you can actually ask questions and type in answers within the RFI documentation. So there are a couple of different options that you'll see there. This is like an official response that gets tracked and logged. You also see there is a submit official response option within the RFI. So that is more of a actual official type of document as opposed to internal. So with those features and functions available to you, I want to jump back over to Civil 3D for a little bit and show a couple of different things. So within Civil 3D itself, we have this surface file there, and I also have a copy and pasted option. This kind of goes back to one of the things that I had mentioned before about the copy and paste is not recommended at this time in terms of taking an existing file and posting it to your BIM 360 project. There are a few of these other ones that have actually been created from scratch within BIM 360. When you open a file from the BIM 360 portal, you'll see a small status bar sort of thing pop up there as it's caching and updating the file information within your Civil 3D environment. So unlike your local drive or unlike your network drive, there is a small delay that you'll see within the open of the file and loading of the file. Now these files are cached locally, so the first time you open it up, that's usually when it's going to take the longest. But if you've been working in these files pretty actively over the course of days or projects, that will tend to speed up. So this file in particular, I haven't used in quite a while. I may have actually changed it since it was originally posted. So that's something that it took a little bit longer to open up in the initial. So this, again, once it's open in Civil 3D, although it is located within the cloud, for most purposes in the background, everything inside of your Civil 3D workflow would be identical to what it was before. So it doesn't change much in terms of how you would create objects, how you would create text or components. Any of those things are still the same. The one big difference is that when you look at the file itself, there's a cloud icon that appears. And then also when you do things like data shortcuts or XREFs, if I were to set a working folder for my data shortcuts, for example, I now have access to my BIM 360 location. So I need to get to my PC there, and then I can get to my BIM 360 hub, and that's where I have access to my BIM 360 for Civil project, and I can get to my data shortcuts or wherever my project folder is. Once that folder is set, you'll see that you have a BIM 360 path also identified within your data shortcuts. So now I have this BIM 360 hub and my project files folder there, as opposed to like a C drive or D drive or a network drive. Everything else looks the same. If you've got your data shortcut files created, your data shortcut XML files are going to be there as well. And then that just goes on as it normally would. With XREFs, it's the same thing. So if I were to start the XREF command, when I try to attach a drawing there within the XREF palette, all I have as a difference is I now have that BIM 360 location there that I can get to, or I can even go further into my BIM 360 project files and create favorite shortcuts there. So if I have a project file within the BIM 360 hub that I want to get to, I can create a shortcut to that folder automatically, just like I would from any other network drive or local drive. And you can see that it is actually syncing to my BIM 360 local cache folder as well. So although it is linking me to BIM 360 there, it is kind of giving me this path within my local drive through that desktop connector. So the desktop connector is actually what's driving the connection between the BIM 360 hub and the drive that I'm working on or referencing here within Civil 3D. When I try to make a change or try to save a file, it's also going to run through the desktop connector. The desktop connector itself is a service that sort of runs in the background. So if I were to open that up, it's something that you can get through your system operations that are down usually in the bottom right corner of your screen. So if I were to do something like that, and I see here, I'll just make a change to this file. Maybe I'll move that over to the side, and then I'll click Save. Within the desktop connector, it should eventually trigger a sync, and that would then give me a pending action that's saying this file is now being pushed back to the BIM 360 location. So there we go. It popped up elements and profiles. That's the name of the drawing. It's syncing back to my BIM 360 account. And once that's done, back on the BIM 360 online portal, I would see a new version pop up with a new date and time indicating that that file has been changed and saved. And if I wanted to see what the differences were, I'd be able to click on that file within the viewer launch that compare function, and I'd be able to do that either overlay compare, where I see red and blue, or the side-by-side slider bar compare, where I can see one version compared to the other as I slide that divider from left to right. So I did want to mention once again our BIM 360 for Civil 3D Jumpstart service. This is a brand new offering from our ISV Consulting Services division. It is a one-day remote education service that we're providing for anybody that's interested in getting started with BIM 360 within their Civil 3D workflows. We've gone through a whole bunch of testing internally. We've done a lot of practice projects, and we've come up with a pretty good outline of what you need to know in order to get a project started and then start to evaluate it effectively for whether or not you wanted to incorporate this into your project cycles. So I just wanted to mention a couple things here that are included within the service itself. It's broken down into about roughly four different pieces. Again, it's just a one day. It's going to be done through WebEx in most cases. It starts out with account administration. So first thing that you'll need to do, of course, with a BIM 360 project is get your account set up, get all of your users added to the projects. So account administration is where we start out, how to get your access to the hub, how to get access to the projects, the different permissions that you can assign to the different users that are going to be part of a project. And then project administration as well, who has access to what files, what level of access you want to give to everybody. Document management in terms of creating files and folders and folder structures, the recommended ways to manage those files and folders, and then of course design collaboration within Civil 3D. So more of detailed information on how to use the features and functions that are available to you once you have that Civil 3D 2020.2 installation run, plus the desktop connector, plus your BIM 360 design entitlement within your Autodesk software package. If you have any questions about this, or if you want more information about that service, if you're interested in getting started with BIM 360 but feel like it might be of benefit to have some assistance there in order to get everything set up, then please feel free to reach out to your account manager or give us a call, send us an email, and we'll be in touch to help you decide whether or not it's a service that's right for you.